So you've been practicing, you've watched enough YouTube tutorials at this point that you know your way around your controller and around a few basic transitions, but something still isn't quite clicking. And here's the thing, that probably isn't your fault. At Crossfader, we've taught over 20,000 DJs this year alone, and in that time, we've identified 7 common mistakes that most beginners make. And once we fix these, then everything becomes a lot easier. Let's get into it. This first one is super simple, but it's an absolute game changer. If you want to be a solid DJ, we have to listen to our music actively way before we even power on the decks. Now, what I mean by this is that we need to give the music our full attention when we're listening. Most people, when listening to music, will do this in a very passive way without even thinking about it. They'll have a track playing in the background whilst they're doing other things, or maybe they will just be sat there listening, but they're not thinking about things like the energy, the direction, the BPM, the key, all these different things that are going to help us decide where we want to put that track in our set. So next time you find yourself listening to music, try giving that track your full focus and attention, and have a list of criteria to put that track against. So be thinking about the genre, the BPM, the key, the general vibe, and whether it's a high energy track that's for peak time or if it's something else that's going to fit elsewhere in your set. And of course, it goes without saying that as DJs, we want to be listening to as much new music as possible. So a fantastic way to categorize those newly discovered tracks as you listen is to either have your notes app open whilst you're listening so that you can make a note next to those new tracks, or even to pre-sort those tracks directly inside your day-to-day streaming apps like Spotify or Apple Music. So listening to your music actively and organizing newly discovered music straight away with this workflow is going to save you doing any guesswork or even doing twice the amount of work when it comes to organizing and building your library within your DJ software. And in terms of where to actually discover new music, streaming platforms like Apple Music and Spotify are a really good place to start, as they have some great discovery options. But it's also worth checking out places like Beatport Charts and Resident Advisor, and also listening to DJs in your genre actually do mixes on either YouTube, SoundCloud, or maybe even a site like 1001 Tracklists, which is a great way to discover new tracks. So right from the very beginning, if you start listening to your music actively and organizing those new discoveries in this way, you'll definitely start to notice your library and your workflow become more streamlined and your sets become more impactful. And that brings us on to mistake number 2, relying totally on streaming when we are DJing. So like we've just said, streaming services like Beatport, Tidal, Apple Music, Spotify, they're all fantastic. They give you an infinite library of music and keep your set lists current. But of course, they require an internet connection. So whenever you use it, there's always a risk of latency. And of course, your hot cues and all of that data on your track is not saved locally. Now, having said that, some streaming services do offer an offline locker feature, but these usually come with a higher tier subscription, and you're still limited in how many songs you can save at one time. Now, if you look to downloading over streaming on platforms like Beatport, Bandcamp, TrackSource, or even record pools like BPM Supreme or The Mashup, then all of these issues get put to one side. All of that track data, like your hot cues and loops, are now permanently stored, and you never have to pray that a venue has decent Wi-Fi when you're playing out. Now, yes, it's more expensive doing it this way track for track, and it takes more time to build your library and curate sets, but honestly, it's absolutely bulletproof doing it this way. And for a lot of DJs, browsing music in this way is where the real fun of DJing actually begins. When you use platforms like SoundCloud or Bandcamp, or those record pools like BPM Supreme or DJ City, you aren't just there buying a couple of tracks, you're getting involved with a community and discovering new artists and new music. And on these platforms, it's a much more immersive experience than just using streaming. A lot of independent artists put their music on Bandcamp and SoundCloud, meaning that they're fantastic for finding those rare underground tracks that not everyone in your local scene is going to be playing. And then record pools are going to give you access to exclusive edits, things like extended intros, acapellas, custom remixes, all of these tracks that are designed with DJs in mind. Now, I'm definitely not saying that as DJs, we should never touch streaming platforms. Like we said earlier, those platforms can be great for discovering new music, and they can also come in really handy when we're practicing and want to test out new tracks. But honestly, just sticking to streaming platforms for music discovery can be really limiting. And to be on the safe side, it's always better to at least download your core list of tracks. Let me know in the comments if you use streaming services to discover new music or when you're DJing, and if not, what your preferred method is. I'd really love to know. So we've talked about listening to our music actively, where to actually source our tracks from, but now we've got our music loaded into our DJ software. And on importing that music, your software is going to automatically analyze your tracks. And this means it doing a few different things. It's going to determine the key of your tracks. It's going to detect the BPM. And then with that information, it's going to lay a beat grid over all of your tracks. First of all though, why is it so important that this information is correct? Well, of course, in terms of beat matching, it means that our visual cues are harder to read and the use of the sync button becomes totally obsolete. Now, if you can beat match by ear, that is totally fine, but it does go further than that. Features like quantize aren't going to work properly, your hot cues aren't going to fire at the right times, your loops won't lock in as seamlessly, and also rhythmic effects like echo or roll will turn into a real mess. So it's not just sync that relies on this beat grid information being correct. So let me show you what I mean. I've got two tracks loaded in here. I've got one where I know the beat grid is correct and one where I know that it isn't. So if we just get this one playing that is correct, and let's try and sync up this one over on deck 2. 1, 2, 3, and. Now already you can see that the beat grid is in the wrong place because we haven't got a downbeat on the beat grid on that first sound. It's also running at apparently 170. And that one's running at 134. And they sound pretty similar, so we know that the BPM information is off as well. So if we try press sync, you can see it's pushed that one to 170 there. This one's still running at the same speed, so it's totally off. So if we try this again without sync and without looking at that BPM information, we just reset that to the middle. And let's just skip to the outro here. And let's just try this one more time by ear this time. 1, 2, 3, and. So it actually needs to go faster. So there we are at about 175 BPM, which now that we've got them pretty much beat matched, we can see is actually down at 134. So that's totally fine as long as we can do that by ear, and we've kind of saved it in that way. But then when it comes to using anything else that is relying on that beat grid being correct, we're not going to be able to use it. So we just get rid of that track. For example, if we try to jump to this hot cue that we've set, 1, 2, 3, 4, you can see that's in the complete wrong place. If we try and use echo, a rhythmic effect like echo, which is currently set on a half, you can see it's at the total wrong speed. And then if we try and use loops as well, so for example, a 4 beat. So let's listen to music, see if we can find a downbeat, and set a loop, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 2, and that's completely out. We could try and do that manually, 1, 2, 3, 4. And because quantize is still trying to snap what we're doing to the beat grid, it's completely wrong anyway. So then we'd have to turn quantize off, but then we're not guaranteed to have anything that we're doing snapping to our beat that we're hearing. So let's have a look at how we quickly fix this using the grid editor. Now, in any DJ software, you'll have a grid edit tool. For now, I'm using Rekordbox. So if we just get rid of this track here, within Rekordbox, there's a couple of ways you can access it, but for now, let's just go to the bottom corner of our deck and access this window here. So when we press that, it's going to open up our grid editor on this tab. And here we've got a load of different tools that we can use to change the beat grid manually. So first of all, if we just go back and find the very first sound, on the left-hand side of the waveform display here, we can zoom in. And then we're just going to drag it so that waveform is just on our playhead there. And the easiest thing to do is press this button here at the top left with the red and white line, which is going to then snap the beat grid to wherever our playhead is. So here we've got it on that first sound. Now, of course, as well on this track, the tempo information is wrong as well. So let's just go ahead and correct that. If you're unsure of the BPM information, you can always use a website like TuneBat just to double check so you can get it right. But like I say, most of the time, your software is going to get this information correct anyway. So now that we've done that, we're going to press this lock symbol here, which is going to make sure that anytime we load this track in, all of those changes we've just made are saved. And if we just zoom out now and have a listen to the track and just watch the waveform, you can see that's looking much better. We've got a line on each of our kick drums, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and our downbeat is in the right place. So now we've totally fixed that. So all of those different functions now work as they should, which is fantastic. So as you're importing new music to your DJ software, be sure to check through all of the analyzing that's happened in your new tracks to avoid complications later down the line. Next up, let's talk about the way that we organize our music within our DJ software. Now, you might think that organizing files sounds like a really boring task, but honestly, a disorganized library can kill your creativity and confidence as a DJ. Now, the best practice is as you're importing your music to file it straight away. But of course, to do that, you need a folder structure that's going to work for all of your tracks. And of course, this has to work for you personally, but if you wanted a simple, repeatable folder structure, then you can have this one. First of all, at the top level, create a folder for each genre. And then within that folder, you can create more subfolders for each subgenre. So for example, if you had a house folder, within there, you might have a separate folder for deep house, tech house, and so on. Then within those subfolders, you're going to want to create a playlist that indicates the energy levels. So low, mid, and peak energy. Of course, you can then tidy it up from there using tools like the star rating tool, and you can also filter by BPM or key, for example, to then start building your sets and maybe some routines. Now, a really effective way of keeping your music selection sounding fresh that most beginners miss out on is then creating an extra playlist of your current rotation of new tracks. Now, you'd still have all of those tracks filed correctly in your foldering system, but having that extra playlist gives you quick access to then using those tracks when you're DJing out and stops you from getting overwhelmed delving into all of those different folders when you're browsing through your music. So the bottom line when organizing your music is avoiding just DJing from a massive library of unorganized tracks, because that can become really overwhelming really quickly. And remember, whatever system you choose to use for yourself, make sure that you stay consistent so that later down the line, your library still makes sense. Now, you may already be realizing that a lot of these mistakes are to do with organization and prep. And to be honest, that is a massive part of having a solid foundation as a DJ. Now, actually translating this into technique behind the decks is where a lot of beginners get stuck. And on the Crossfader platform, we have tutorials, courses, mix breakdowns, tips, tricks, and hacks for every genre, designed to completely eliminate the guesswork in putting all of this into practice. So if you don't want to miss out on the most streamlined way to becoming a solid DJ, make sure you sign up to Crossfader for free today. I'll go ahead and leave the link down in the description. Next up, let's talk about hot cues. Now, as DJs, we put together set lists of different tracks that work well together, and we can almost think of hot cues as taking that a step further, because with hot cues, we have instant access to any section of a track that we want to have access to. So then we can either use them to completely rearrange the order of those sections, or to completely skip different sections of a track or jump to them. And we can also use them for things like phrase matching between two tracks and loads of other more advanced techniques as well. They're really versatile. Now, it's worth me saying that you definitely don't need hot cues to make a good sounding set, but they are a really useful tool that it's worth knowing your way around. And where most beginners get confused is overthinking where to actually set them in the first place, and then being too doubtful to actually use them because they can't remember which hot cue is where in a track. So to fix this mistake, let's have a look at a really simple workflow example that's going to get rid of all of that confusion, meaning we can utilize our hot cues properly. So let's have a look at these two tracks that I've got loaded in here. So you've probably already spotted that they both have hot cues set on them already. And you might have also spotted that the majority of these hot cues actually have labels in text form. Now, you might not know this, but you can go through and actually label your hot cues. So if I just go to this one here, which hasn't got a label at the moment, it's just got the timestamp. And if I right click on that, not only can I change the color on record box, but I can also add a comment here. Now, this hot cue is right at the beginning, so I'm going to go ahead and call it intro. So that can be a really useful tool just for starting to build a bit of a workflow that's going to work for you. And the idea here is to set your hot cues in the same spots across your entire library, so on every single track. When you have a system for setting your hot cues in this way, it means that no guesswork is going to be involved when it comes to using them, because you're not even going to have to think about where each of these hot cues is going to take you in a track, because it's going to be the same across your entire library. So, for example, on all of my tracks, I have a hot cue right at the beginning, which is always hot cue A. Hot cue B then takes me to the breakdown. I haven't got C on this side because that section is missing. So on this side, hot cue C always takes me to the build up, and then D is right on that drop, and then E is my outro. And then from there, any of my extra hot cues are on these remaining banks here. So they don't necessarily always have to be in the order of the track, but those 5 hot cues are my essential hot cues. And then these 3 banks are then for any extras that I might want to quickly access during that track. Let me show you an example of how we might use these hot cues in a transition. So I'm going to wait for this phrase, trigger deck 1, start mixing in. Blend the EQs like normal. And then when we get to this next phrase, I'm going to jump to the outro on hot cue E over on the outgoing track. And I'll also swap the low ends. Then that leaves us to just continue blending. And then on this next phrase, I'll fade down and jump over to the breakdown. Now, of course, that is just one example of a hot cue workflow, and yours might be totally different if you are using hot cues. But just remember to always think about phrasing and those different sections when you're considering where to set them. But the key message here is to keep it consistent across your entire music library so that you're not guessing which hot cue is going to take you to which section whilst you're actually playing out. Now, let's be completely honest. Mixing in key is definitely not a strict rule, and you don't have to do it every transition. Plenty of DJs don't, but it's definitely a mistake to just completely ignore key altogether. Mixing in key is the ultimate way to guarantee that a transition is going to sound smooth and musical rather than clashing and out of tune. So to fix this mistake, let's have a quick look at how we can use the Camelot wheel and how we can plan our mix so that it's in key. So first of all, within your DJ software, you'll have the option to filter and search by key. So here, for example, within Rekordbox, you can see that I've got all of my tracks displayed here at the moment. And just above each column, we've got track title, BPM, the date I imported it, and here we've got our key. So if we just go ahead and press on where it says key, you can see that it's now organized all of my tracks into an order, or it's grouped all of the ones in the same key together. So right now we're at 11A, then it goes to 11B, 12A, 12B, and that is all great, but we need to know what that means. So each number and letter combination is referring to a different musical key, all working with a system called the Camelot wheel. Now, just before we take a look at that, it's worth noting that any track that is in the same key is going to work together, as long as it's the same genre, vibe, and energy, but harmonically, any track that is, for example, 11A here is going to work nice and smoothly. But we have some more options than that. So if I just go onto the Crossfader website and access these tools over here, and I'm going to go on this one here, the Camelot wheel. Now, I'm going to go ahead and find 11A. And if I just press on that, it's going to show me the other options that I have to harmonically mix from 11A. So you can see that I can go to 11B, the relative major, or I can go either side to 12A or 10A. And you can see over on the right here, it's actually telling me what's going on harmonically. So it's saying I can either mix to 11A, which is the same key, 12A would be up a fifth, 10A down a fifth, and then 11B, the relative major. And it also tells me the actual key in terms of musical notation. So this first track I've loaded in, you can see, is in 3A. So let's just quickly go over to our Camelot wheel and double check. So I can mix to 2A, 4A, or 3B, or I can stay the same. To start with, let's see if we can just do a perfect blend and select a track that is also in 3A. So I've got another track in 3A loaded in here, so let's just get this matched up and see if we can transition across. Get those EQs ready. Start fading it in. Swap the low ends. And then exit this outgoing track. Sweet, that worked nicely. So let's see if we can change it up a little bit now, and why don't we find one that switches over to the relative major over at 3B. So we've got this next track here in 3B, so let's have a go and mixing this one in. So you can definitely tell it's a different key, but it's not necessarily clashing too much, but definitely not as smooth as if we were mixing into another track in 3A.
This is how we like to party. Flex, hey, isn't thrill. Ain't up on the ground, yeah. Sex, wheels, bass and thrill. This is how we like to party. Sex, play, bass and thrill. Get up on the floor and get on the floor, 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 on the floor, get on the floor.
So mixing in key is a great way to ensure that your transitions sound nice and smooth. And if you think that that Camelot wheel tool would be helpful for you, go ahead and check the description, as I'm gonna leave a link for that down below as well. So we understand song selection, library organization, setting hot cues, analyzing our tracks, and so on. But the one thing that holds beginners back the most is the way that they practice. Now, as DJs, most of the time we'll load in a few tracks, mix for an hour, and call it a day. And that is a totally valid part of practicing, as it teaches us a lot about what it's like to continuously mix. But also by doing that, we're just reinforcing the stuff that we already know, rather than looking for things that are going to improve our technique. So if we want to improve, it's really important to have structure in our practice, to always be looking at targeting those weak points and practicing those drills, and to always be looking for new challenges that are going to improve our technical ability. And this is where the Crossfader platform comes in really handy. One of the most frustrating things about watching through countless YouTube tutorials is having to sift through all of the information that we've already seen. And this is where Crossfader's Nudge AI really comes into its own. You're able to tell Nudge about what you're trying to do, or ask it to challenge you, or about a specific technique, and it's going to pull all of the relevant information and video content together for you. As part of the complete DJ package, you also have access to tools like the DJ Hub and the Transitions Library, all full of different tips, tricks, and tutorials that are going to help you streamline and focus your practice. You'll also have a practice zone where you can save any of these tutorials for later reference and practice. And along with that, you'll have a personalized learning journey, meaning that you will see the right videos at the right time for you. So I've got two tracks here that I'd like to mix between, but I'm not quite sure what I'd like to do with them. So I'm going to go over to Nudge and I'm going to ask, I've got two high energy 140 BPM tracks that I'd like to transition between. Have you got any suggestions? Now, let's see what it comes up with. So now you can see that it's given me a few different suggestions here, and it's also given me some video tutorials should I wish to watch them as well. So let's have a quick read through and let's have a go at applying some of this to our transition. So from what Nudge has told me here, I'm going to focus on using reverb, using the filter suite when it comes to swapping the low end and getting that phrasing sorted. So let's get our two tracks playing and have a go at this transition. So my first track's playing out, I've got my second track ready to go, so I'm just going to wait for the next phrase and then I'll go ahead and trigger that. Here it comes, 1, 2, 3, and. Let's prep our EQs as normal, and I'm going to go ahead and get a reverb ready on both decks that's going to happen during the breakdown. So I've got these two tracks phrase matched up, so they're going to hit their breakdowns at the same time. We'll just carry on blending, and when we hit this next phrase, let's try that filter sweep as we swap those low ends. So here we go. 2, 3, and. Nice. Just gonna leave these playing side by side. Sounds really good. I'm going to start applying a little bit of reverb and filter up on the exiting track. So now we've just got the new track in, reverb applied, Let's go ahead and shorten that reverb a little bit. Maybe start increasing the level before we're gonna kill it just before the drop. 1, 2, 3, 4, kill, 2, 3, and. So let's have a look at one more way that we could exit this transition over here. So this time, let's head into the transitions training section here, and let's go to looping and effects tricks and look for an exiting effect. So we've got this one here, echo and filter exit. So let's just click on that one. Hey guys, welcome to the transitions library. So in this video, just have a browse through because I can't remember what I said. And also, actually, we've got that nice kind of. So it looks like we've got a combination of echo and the low pass filter through this build up section before sweeping the filter up and killing that exiting track. So let's go ahead and see if we can apply that to our transition here. Trying out new creative ideas and targeting those gaps in your technique is a way to ensure that you are improving rather than just hoping that something is going to click. So whether you're a complete beginner or a little bit further on in your DJ journey, I really hope that this video has been helpful and provided some value. And if it has been helpful, remember to check out those links in the description, comment down below. And if you've enjoyed this video, then check out this one right here.